Hi, we're here.
We are here.
Hello, welcome all. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And I got to tell you, I'm getting ready for the end of the empire.
Okay, is that why you're running late? Were you off slaying dragons?
No, I wasn't that. Well, I mean, I had a lot of things to do today, but no, that wasn't what I was doing.
Okay.
I had to get all freshened up.
I could see that. You had to get coiffed. You're having an alfalfa situation.
I'll get it fixed in a second. But today, I had like a whole bunch of things that I needed to take care of. I hadn't gotten a massage in a long time. And the masseuse I have is from Australia, and she's awesome. And it was just something that was like so needed. I realized that.
Is that what happened to your hair? Because your hair, that's what I'm saying.
No, I will get my hair fixed in a second. I will jump up in a second. But welcome all. Please make sure to hit that like button. We're all doing great. We've got a lot of stories to cover this evening. Our good friend Daniel McAdams is going to be joining us from the Ron Paul Institute. You know, little did I know recently that Daniel actually does a regular podcast with Ron Paul. So in the future, I think we will hopefully be able to get Mr. Paul on the podcast. But our understanding is that he likes to go early. He's definitely an early bird kind of guy. He's not.
And by early, Peter means, before lunch?
Yeah, somewhere around there, like lunchtime. We can work that out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's pretty normal. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we'd make exceptions for certain people. You know, it'd be cool to talk to Ron Paul.
Jen, how pathetic are the Democrats?
I don't know, Peter, because I don't follow them like you do. That's why I stopped being interested in the Democrats. They're so
be a good warm up, because there's people out there who actually think that this party is going to be saved somehow. But I really think people are just kind of getting they're having enough of the bullshit that they're constantly seeing. So I think this video perfectly captures in many ways what the problem with the party is. This is from a town hall that Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado decided to do. Might not have been the smartest move.
Sanders has a bill that he wants to bring up to Congress to put an arms embargo on Israel, who just 3 days ago killed 178 children in one night while they were sleeping in their tents. The U.S. has been complicit in sending money. Congress has voted to send weapons in, I think, violation of Leahy laws and international laws to an apartheid state that is plausibly carrying out a genocide. When are we going to stop supporting this? When are we going to say, no, we're not going to continue killing children and innocent people? They're talking 60,000 to 200,000 people dead from U.S. weapons. And this is something you and Hickenlooper have both supported for 16 months.
I do think that the Gaza situation is a tragic situation.
It's a tragic situation. It's a situation. Peter, I don't know where you are, but there's a situation in Gaza. So I'm just glad that we're all clear that there's a situation. Okay, yeah, that's a situation.
And it is my hope that we will someday be in a place where we are able to get a two-state solution there that can put this period.
Okay.
Still
that is a major red flag. That's a red flag, people. Whenever somebody mentions a two-state solution, they have no idea. Not only do they have no idea what they're talking about, but they're just perpetuating this ridiculous myth that was never actually intended to be a thing. There is no such thing as a two-state solution. That's not a thing. never was meant to be a thing, and Israel has said it never will be a thing. So this person is not serious. Also, he referred to Gaza as a situation.
Yeah, but he also thinks his constituents are stupid, which is what most of these politicians think. They have been convinced for the longest time that the reason they're able to get away with this is because they are convinced beyond any doubt whatsoever, that they can talk their way out of a paper bag because of the hyper-partisanship that exists today. And that there will eventually be people go, well, we got to stop the Republicans or we got to stop the Democrats. No. I think it'll be worse on the Democratic side because the party's dying. But I think a lot of people are just getting sick and tired of the two-party divide. I think that's a huge part of it.
Weapons, and they could stop killing people. And you're in a place where you could do that.
And we obviously have a different point of view about that, and that
they're getting bombs dropped on their tents. That's not a different point of view. That's fact. Yeah. That's happening, and it's from weapons that are paid for with our tax dollars.
It's from weapons that are paid for with our tax dollars. That's true. And
oh yeah, now he'll go with that ridiculous
premise. The conflagration that we're in right now.
Learn MMT.
Well,
this is making me so angry. The conflagration we're in right now.
We will disagree on this tonight. I appreciate your advocacy. I'll have to take a look at it. Thank you for asking. What's the next question?
This is not a serious person.
I think
How do you go to work when there are hundreds of thousands of Palestinians dying over and over again? How do you morally support that kind of outrage?
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll tell you how, because I signed up for this job because I convinced a whole bunch of yokels like you that I was the right guy for the job, even though I don't do diddly shit on a regular basis. This job is a privileged position. I'm one of 100 people that have it, and I'm not giving it up. I get it.
This is the key point right here. This is how I feel too. Exactly. He's standing up there, this guy, that douche, like, we could just agree to disagree. No, we don't get to agree to disagree. You do what we tell you to do. That's your fucking job. Like, that is so infuriating. This is why I don't follow this stuff. I'm gonna have a stroke. Like that, that is so infuriating.
Jen, you lived in Boulder, Colorado for a time. Would you care to tell Michael Brown the type of Democrats that vote for somebody like Michael Bennet?
Okay, first of all, in all fairness to me, I lived in Colorado from 1988 to 1992, and it was not what it is now, right? So I actually did live there.
It was a red state at the time when you were there.
It was red, and Boulder was very, very hippie, and it was just a very different vibe. And now, of course, it has become complete neo-lib central. Now it's complete neo-lib central and you can tell because the urban development there. When I was in college, you would fly into the airport in Denver, which was Stapleton Airport. It was a small airport. It wasn't anything. And then it would be about 40-minute drive from there until Boulder and the Boulder County little, outskirts. Now it's a continuous urban sprawl. So as Colorado has become increasingly lib, we have also seen it increasingly destroyed. So now it's overpopulated, overdeveloped, and you know what? It's not at all surprising. Now it's, that makes total sense. They ruin everything they touch.
And in many ways, if you think about it, Michael Bennet kind of embodies in so many ways the disposition of the overeducated, overprivileged liberal. Like he really has that attitude of, well, we're going to look at a two-state solution and that'll be the way to do it. The disconnect is so real and so bad. But that's why this issue of what's happening in the Middle East has really changed everything in this country, because it's completely exposed everyone who's been pulling the wool over people's eyes for many, many years. Now they can't pull it over their eyes anymore. They can't, because they are realizing just how much attachment corporate special interests have in our government. And if that's not enough, it's the fact that they are actually engaged in a genocide with maybe the most powerful lobby backing it up in all of Washington. So we could not have picked a better time to bring on what, in my opinion, and I think, Jen, you would agree, is one of the best anti-war, principled people that we know in politics. We have said for the longest time that Thomas Massie is the most principled Congress member that is in Capitol Hill today.
I
And
wish that said something, don't you? Like, it's
yeah.
so unfortunate that, like, I hear that and I'm thinking, yeah, he is, because why? Because he's not a corporate tool. Like, that's the bar, people. That's the bar.
We're lucky enough that people are waking up to that reality today, because the godfather or the grandfather of it, if you will, is Ron Paul. And Ron Paul planted the seeds that needed to be planted back in 2008. And he was given hell by the current incarnation of the GOP at the time for saying the things that he said. Today, it seems that his message is as important as any that we could be hearing, especially when it comes to foreign policy that we have. And who better to speak with that about that topic than the person who is the director of the Ron Paul Institute? He's been here before. He'll be here again. You know him, you love him. Daniel McAdams, welcome back to Generational Change.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you guys tonight.
Hi, it's good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, how are you feeling in the apocalypse? How's the apocalypse treating you these days?
Well, we're getting ready. We're getting ready. Yeah, we should storing water and whatever. I don't know. There was a good EU video on what to put in your purse. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No, but we're getting to that. Like, I was thinking that I should have a go bag. You know what I mean? Like, we're getting to that point. Like, they're just starting to round people up that are not citizens, but to think that they're not going to get to citizens is extremely delusional to me.
Yeah, my go bag is a bottle of vodka. I don't care about anything else.
I like the way you think.
Based on what you're seeing at this point, it does seem that there is a healthy contingent of people that did support Trump that are not on board with what's going on. They're very keenly aware that while this may not be Trump's call, he is allowing this to happen, and it's probably strictly transactional. But the danger that lurks as a result can't be measured. It is beyond the erosion of our civil liberties, among other things. So I'm curious, from where you stand, do you have some degree of optimism that the libertarian movement in particular, that has grown leaps and bounds over the years, that now has a real foothold within the MAGA movement, is actually going to create some type of a sea change, especially when it comes to Israel? Do you see that happening right now?
Well, I don't know that the libertarian contingent will be behind it, but I do think the American people, and I think, there definitely is a bifurcation in the Republican Party now. I mean, the younger generation is anti-war. They're anti-corporatist. They're for the working people. There's a whole sort of new generation, but you have the boomers, you have the people who have the I'll just spit it out, the Christian Zionists, who want us to go to war for Israel. You have those who want the Bush Cheney types are still in power. I mean, unfortunately, Trump's entire national security team are Bush Cheney types. In fact, Waltz worked for Bush. So you have this kind of sort of civil war within the party. I'm not confident that our side will win, our side being the anti-war side. But I think it's inevitable. I think the future is inevitable. I think the next generation does not have the psychological baggage that the exiting generation has. And I think that's something to be optimistic about. But from getting there, from here, that's what worries me.
Yeah, I think like, oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Peter.
No, Jen, you first.
I was just going to say, like, when we talk about the anti-war movement, which I don't really see anymore in any one place, there's so many different rhymes or reasons why people are anti-war. I mean, yeah, you have the original Code Pink, they're anti-war, but there is this contingency that comes from where I see Trump's base, where it's their premise is America first, and they don't like the idea of our resources being used in all of these overseas empire ventures, as opposed to going into our own country here. And so it's much more of, I think, a nationalistic reason. But in my mind, I'll take it. Like any reason that anybody is anti-war, whether it's you don't think we should spending the money on it or you think it's a moral issue, it's all good to me. You know what I'm saying? And I think that contingency of people, for whatever reason, the anti-war group is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think once they start to listen, they might listen to the other parts of it. For me, it's primarily a moral issue, but I understand the enormous economic windfall for the war machine. But I think when they start listening, they'll start to get the entire picture and understand that it's the whole enchilada, so to speak. But it's just a matter of getting people to listen, and that's why, frankly, that's why I was very sanguine for the first few weeks of the Trump administration. I was very happy. I was very happy that USAID was exposed. I was disappointed that it was framed in a way that, oh, those woke lefties,
right?
USAID, we're going to get rid of all that crap. No, the right wing used it and loved it as much as anyone else, and they may well continue to make use of it. Nevertheless, the conversation started. Why are we doing all this stuff? Why do we own newspapers overseas? Why are we backing up all these newspapers? And I actually just gave a speech at our spring conference last weekend when I talked about how the effect of us owning or at least manipulating 90% of Ukrainian media. When you talk about being a feedback loop, you talk about our intelligence agencies using open source intelligence as a primary source. I mean, the super secret spooky stuff is not as important as open source stuff. And I had a security clearance. I handle classified material. I know how it goes. The open source stuff is much more useful. So when your open source stuff is completely fake, as it was in Ukraine, there's that feedback loop of fake information going to the CIA, still popping up to the president. You get bad decisions made, you get 1 million people killed. So just that stuff coming out was great. I'm happy about it. However, it's taken a sinister turn these last couple of weeks. And I don't know what to think. The deportation of people, the crackdown on people, and it does, honestly, you guys are probably too young, but it reminds me of immediately post 9/11. Where if you
I love that you said that about me and him, that we're too young or whatever. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I was born in 71.
Oh my gosh. Well,
so I very much remember.
Useful. Okay, very youthful. Yeah, you remember, hey, you're either with the terrorists or you're with the terrorists. That's what.
No, Daniel, you gotta say it right. We're you're either with the people or you're with the terrorists. Come on, now.
Exactly. That's right. And so if you say, hey, there's a PhD student who wrote an op-ed, should we really be dragging her off to prison and deporting her? What the hell's wrong with you? You don't just come into our country and speak your mind. It's scary. It's a mob mentality.
Well, Jen's favorite word to describe these out of control elected representatives is caucasity. The caucasity of Congresswoman Sparks to pull the crap that she just pulled in the Indianapolis representative from District 5 in Indiana, saying, you are not entitled to due process. I'm just thinking, let's just burn that Constitution already. It's incredible. They want it. This is why the two-party system has to die.
Well, they don't. The truth is, anybody who's corporatist does not give a crap about the Constitution and does not give a crap about our civil liberties. That's not their priority. Their priority is whoever their donor is or whatever master they're serving. Those of us who care about the Constitution and our civil liberties recognize that this is extremely scary. First of all, First Amendment rights apply to everybody who's standing here. Everybody on Turtle Island gets First Amendment rights. That's just how it works. You don't have to be a citizen. It doesn't matter why you're here. You get them because you just get them because you exist. That's why. That's right. And really, the only thing that we're in regular people, and by regular people, I mean just pedestrians talking about the Constitution, that you need to really understand is the only thing that you need to worry about as citizen is in terms of if they can vote. That's it. Just work. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, everything else applies to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can't tell you how many knuckleheads out there will challenge you on that. The First Amendment is just for American citizens. Don't you? They have no idea. I mean, this is, I guess, the public schools have failed. I mean, the aspirational nature of the founding of this country. The whole purpose, and Madison wrote about it extensively. The whole purpose is that we aspire to demonstrate that our creator, whoever you may believe that to be, has endowed us with certain rights, and they can't be given or taken by the government. And so many people just don't get it. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I should just beat my head against the wall, because I would have more success than arguing with people on X about this, especially right wingers.
Yeah,
Well,
they don't understand it. They don't get it because they don't see that it'll happen to them. I actually want to put out like public safety messages to students specifically on campuses, whether graduate students, any students. You guys walk in groups, stay in big groups with each other. Don't allow people that aren't citizens to be, first of all, not that it should matter, but they're starting with the lowest hanging fruit. So let's, be protective of each other, and just, we need a buddy system.
What are they going to do? I mean, they are massive rallies led by liberal Jewish students on these campuses. How can they continue to ignore this? And at what point are they going to strike? And what's it going to look like?
that's all.
It's coming down to a battle between what everybody wants and what the big Israeli Zionist donors and AIPAC have paid for. So they're caught, because you can see that the public sentiment is growing increasingly more and more anti-Israel. That's just, every poll showed that, like, more and more we're seeing Americans say, maybe we need to cut ties. Maybe they've gone a little too far. So it's clear that that's what the public sentiment is. However, the donor class is a whole other thing. So, when you've got Miriam Adelson essentially bought the West Bank, and they just seem to be going on with this greater Israel project. But people who really know, that the people that I listen to that are ex-military, State Department, that this is what they talk about, we're not getting anywhere near the proper information as to what kind of horrid shape Israel is actually in, economically, militarily, and otherwise. Their population is leaving, their economy is in the toilet. They're incapable of doing what we're all scared they're going to do. They're kind of not able to do what they want to do. So, it's a mess, but it will eventually undo. Like, people aren't going to continue to this is not going to continue to go on like this.
Yeah, and I almost feel like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I almost feel like we're sort of in the last days of this, and that's why they're getting so desperate. That's why they're getting so aggressive toward people. But the sting isn't there, unless, of course, you're a foreign student. The sting isn't there of calling these things out. I mean, I remember when Pat Buchanan, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, talked about Congress as Israeli occupied territory, and it was genuinely shocking. And people thought this would end his career, and now we can openly say it. You can have people like Thomas Massie talk about it openly with Tucker Carlson, two of the most popular people. Tucker Carlson, one of the most popular media people. You have people like Candace Owens talk about it, and she's extremely popular. Not that I agree with how things are always framed, but nevertheless, it can be talked about now openly. You just can't put the genie back in. You can try to ban TikTok, but you can't put the genie back in. And in fact, as you point out, Jen, I mean, Israel's in terrible shape. Things are getting worse. Public opinion against Israel worldwide is extremely negative. There's a Gallup poll that came out in February saying I don't have the number in front of me, but the American attitude toward our relationship with Israel is the most negative it has ever been in the 20 years of that polling. This is going to continue, and it's not going to get better. And, I would say people who are concerned for the future of Israel, the U.S. government's not doing them any favors, just like it didn't do Zelensky any favors by saying, okay, come on, you guys, go fight. Keep going. Keep at it. Take down Russia. Come on. What's wrong with you guys?
We're like cockfighters. We have
exactly.
cockfighting rings, and we just sacrifice all these, and they are kind of like cocks. But so, I mean, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Good use of language there, Jen. I have to say, very well played. But what I will say, which I think is important, when you think about why the Zionist state is going to fall, it's because they always say that the deadliest sin is pride. Pride is greatest just before the fall. And here is an example of just that. according to Michael Gove, and you only have to take one look at the guy to know that he looks exactly as you would expect him to look. IDF should be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. When you start putting out publications like that, you can't accelerate Israel's demise any faster.
Again, I'm going to have to say it again. Can we have some sympathy for The Onion? What are they to do? That is the most ridiculous headline I have ever seen. Like that has to be like The Onion. That's absurd.
And then the subheadline is, thank God Israel had the courage to sometimes ignore its most powerful ally. And on top of everything else, I mean, you can just tell when people, I have always been hypercritical of the left when it comes to their use of language, especially when they label people as racists and bigots and sexist and all those things that they will throw at the drop of a hat. But I will tell you, if there is one classification of political ideology where you could call them racist, bigoted, xenophobes of the highest order, it's people that identify with the Zionist movement. No,
they're Nazis. They're Nazis.
And the disregard for human life is so insane. They do not hide their supremacist views that, yeah, for every one Israeli captured person, we must kill 1,000 Palestinians. It's something along those lines in terms of calculation. And so for a person like Michael Gove to put out an article like this in the JC is to suggest that, is he doing it tongue-in-cheek? Is he even attempting to be satirical? No, this is what they believe. They really do believe this, that the IDF is a benevolent military force and that everything they do is correct, even though I don't have the tweet. But I will tell you that I saw this information that was just reported recently. For those of you in the audience who may not know this, do you know how many hospitals are in Gaza?
Now?
36. You know how many there are now? None.
Yeah.
I mean, that is crimes against humanity. Period.
I mean, just imagine if Belarus was doing this, or if any other country in the world was doing it, it would be at the top of the headlines everywhere. And in fact, the only place you actually read about some of these things is Haaretz in Israel itself. You know, there was a couple of great headlines that I saw today, and someone even reposted it on X saying, can you imagine even one mainstream newspaper in the United States coming up with a headline like this? You know, it's just completely ignored. And it's unbelievable to see this happening in real time. And I mean, I have to say, it's very depressing. Very depressing.
Do you believe that most of the foreign policy decision-making, particularly when it comes to the, it's not even a conflict, we can't call it a conflict, but the attacks that we have perpetuated on Yemen, as well as Syria, and everything looks like an encircling of Iran, which we know for the longest time that General Clark had spoken about. He actually was kind enough to grace us with his presence on our channel, and he brought that up about how Iran has always been the end game since 1979. And you think about the prospect of World War III, and everyone always thinks, nah, it's not going to happen. We're too advanced of a species. And I'm thinking, no, we're not. We're still primitive in many ways. And so do you in any way trust Trump to see us through this? Or do you think he's becoming too engulfed with the Israel machine as it spirals in many ways?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's the path of least resistance for him, you know, and it's been consistent in that way. But I almost think, I mean, I always get to feel these past few, couple of weeks, it's just kind of gone off the rails. You know, I mean, he was, remember, I mean, if I can use a slightly bad word, over the weekend, he's pissed off. I'm pissed off at Putin because he challenged the legitimacy of Zelensky. Dude, like 3 weeks ago, you said Zelensky is an unelected dictator. You know, I mean, he happened to be playing golf with the president of Finland. He comes back in, I guess he got an earful from this guy, picks up the phone, apparently, calls NBC News and talks about how mad he is at Russia. It's all their fault for not making a deal, when in fact they said, okay, we want to do 30 days without hitting infrastructure. Okay, sounds good. The next day, their infrastructure gets hit. We want to do a Black Sea thing. Okay, couple of things that we want, but we're happy to do it. Boom. It doesn't go through because Zelensky says no. So I just don't know what's going on with Trump. I mean, he's surrounded by bad people. He's saying the craziest things. I mean, Greenland, there was a Fox News poll.
Listen, you're asking, I have to channel him. You made a mistake, Daniel, and I can't accept that on my channel. Red, white, and blue land. Let's start saying it just like the Gulf of America. It's like a clown show. It sucks. But
70% of the people in this Fox News poll that came out a couple of days ago, I think a week or so ago, 70% say they think it's a cockamamie idea. They're against it. This is an unpopular idea, but it got trotted out when Signalgate broke. He didn't want to have to deal with this issue. And even though the media was coddling him and treating it as if the leak was the real issue rather than bombing the crap out of Yemen for no reason at all, and even admitting there's no reason to do it, I don't know, send a message, blame it on Biden, who cares? Even though the media handed him that, he still had to do this. And I'm just convinced that's why this whole Greenland nonsense has come back up. It's insane. And how embarrassing for J.D. Vance. He goes over there and nobody will meet with him. They won't let him off the military base. Nobody wants to talk to him. They treat him like he's, a retarded child or something. They don't. It
was glorious.
Yeah,
it was so glorious. It's so funny.
And because he's a sharp knife. Like people really do underestimate Vance. But that's the problem with what is often regarded as just a stand-in position. It's not real. It doesn't provide any real benefit other than maybe some name ID to handle it. But the vice president very often gets stuck with these odd jobs. And in many ways, it's supposed to make the president look better, even unfortunately, sometimes at the expense of you looking really dumb. And in this case, I think they all look dumb. I don't understand this. I don't know what they think they're going to get. Putin has made it very clear that, going after Greenland is kind of a non-starter. And I think that's in a lot of ways why, Trump is like trying to wax poetic. But all I'm thinking is it'd be a lot easier for us to, kind of show our strength if we didn't have to deal with the fact that BRICS is a real thing and that there are nations around the globe, in particular led by China and Russia, that have formed a unification in many ways because our empire is just basically pushed itself past the point of no return in many ways. And even though the signs are all there that we need to pull it back, they don't want to pull it back. And that's what frustrates me, as I'm sure it frustrates you, frustrates Jen, frustrates everybody.
$37 trillion in debt. It's got to be paid. It's got to be paid in one way or the other. The inflation tax is the tax that hurts working people the most because they're the least able to afford the inflation tax. It hits everyone equally. So it's obviously proportionally much more painful for working people. And that's how they're going to do it. They're going to balance it on the backs of working people in America, and it's I don't think the center can hold.
So let's say that we talk about one significant economic difference between the populist left and the populist right, particularly progressives versus libertarians, which of course is modern monetary theory. If you do not subscribe to past maybe the basic concept of MMT, which is of course that the Federal Reserve prints money first and then we're taxed after that. So if you're looking at, let's say, I've seen it, I've been, to New York City many times. Obviously, I'm from New Jersey. We see the ticker that goes. I've seen Rand Paul do it. I've seen Thomas Massie do it. We have this much debts piling up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my question to you is, let's assume that we do have a debt crisis, or what should be the bigger concern is a deficit crisis. If you were to be in control of how money is spent in this country, and we were to look for an area where, we can start pushing it towards a surplus instead of a deficit, what would you do? How would you want to change things that you think would lead us in a better direction and perhaps enhance the value of our currency, which I do think is a real issue? I do think the devaluation of the dollar is a real thing.
Yeah, I think the first thing you go for is the military. We don't need the military. And Trump even said it himself like a month ago. I think we can start by cutting 50%. And then they put through an omnibus that increased military spending. It's just that's where I almost lost it, It's like you talk one thing and you do the other. That's the obvious one. No one's going to attack us. No one can attack us. If we stop provoking people, we'll be fine. We can cut 90% of the military. And I think, I think Doge was on the right track to a degree, and I was a little surprised that more progressives didn't get on board, simply for the fact that when you go after Social Security fraud, when you go after dead people who fraudulently collecting this money, you're actually propping it up. You're making it more secure for the future. So I think you can do stuff like that. You're not going to cut a lot by waste, fraud, and abuse. But you can certainly start with the military. You can start with cutting out these agencies. I mean, I love it when I see the housing market in DC going down. That's great.
I think
And
we
as
can
much
all
as
agree on that one.
yeah, and as much as I feel for people that are kicked out of work, it's hard when you have a family, and I feel bad for them, on sort of a human level. However, these people are doing, for the most part, a lot of them are doing very evil things that we don't really need to have done. So it's good to see a little bit of unemployment in DC. So I think there's a room for a lot of that.
So I have a follow-up question. Obviously, being the director of the Ron Paul Institute and knowing exactly how much waste, fraud, and abuse at least on some periphery, about how bad things really are. We have over 900 military bases that we know of. I'm sure there's plenty others that we don't know of. So do you have a roundabout idea how much, let's just say on the grand scheme of things, we even needed 100 military bases around the world, which is also crazy, but let's just say we could get it down to a respectable number like that. How much are these military bases costing us every year? Do you have a roundabout idea of what that is?
Well, it's like with the Pentagon, you can't really audit it. I mean, it's difficult to say there are direct causes, and you can find those as line items in the budget, probably in some way or the other, unless they're black sites or what have you. But there are indirect costs. There's a cost of when you have a massive military. There's a cost of the VA. There's the payment on the on interest of the debt. But if you say, okay, let's say we close 800 of them, we leave 100 open, which I can't imagine why you need 100 bases overseas. You're going to be saving hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Every year probably. I don't know. I don't have the figure in front of me, but it just seems like a no-brainer. These bases are just basically a way of manipulating local economies and manipulating countries. We don't need to do it.
I think that's fair. Jen?
I'm sorry. I was being distracted by goons in the chat for a second.
Really? Wow.
Sorry. People think that everybody should always have to agree on everything, and otherwise we just label them as things and completely dismiss them. And I find that infuriating. I'm sorry. I let it distract me.
Well, if we can agree on these critical issues, because again, as I've said, progressives and libertarians have a far lot more in common than they don't. You want to disagree with Mr. McAdams when it comes to the deficit and the debt? That's your business. I disagree on some aspects, and I don't disagree on others.
But what I do know is people that throw out labels and just do name calling are people that really don't understand what they're talking about. And it just shows. And the only reason that I don't ban them or whatever is because it helps our algorithm to have people in the chat.
Yes, but at the same time, I think it's also important that people understand what libertarianism really is, because I think everybody gets caught up in these notions of, anybody who has seen the Libertarian Party conventions know that these events can attract some of the most outlandish type of people. Not everybody is vermin supreme. So what I think is important to note is, you're expressing your concerns for how our country has reached a point where our spending is out of control. And it is out of control. Is there
the wrong ways, but
Yes.
in the wrong ways, in the wrong places. And that's where I'm that's where I have issues with what I refer to as the libertarian people.
I should actually just clarify, but the Ron Paul Institute is not a libertarian organization. The whole concept of the Ron Paul Institute was based on after the 2007 presidential campaign, when Dr. Paul brought together the candidates of the quote unquote minor parties, And that included people like Cynthia McKinney, who no one accuses of being a libertarian, Chuck Baldwin, who's no libertarian, he's a right winger. Who was the LP guy? Bill, I'm forgetting his name now. But these were the minor party people, and they brought them together despite their disagreements philosophically, and they agreed on a few basic things, one of them being stop the empire overseas. And so the whole concept of the Ron Paul Institute is bringing together disparate philosophies in the common goal of advancing peace and prosperity. And that's why Dennis Kucinich was one of the first people that we invited to be on our board. And of course he accepted. So just to clarify, people might misunderstand. We're not the Reason. We're not Cato. We're not any of these organizations.
No.
We are a beyond left-right coalition of people who are interested in peace and prosperity. So just to clarify that.
Right. No, and that's what I
I
said
don't
before.
consider
I
myself a
actually don't
libertarian,
care
but
what people's reasons are for not wanting to expand American empire and for wanting to rein that in and end the military industrial complex. I don't care what people's reasons are. Then if that's what you're wanting to do, then we're on the same team.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's key. And I think the other key that libertarians also tend to agree with progressives on is the corporate special interests have completely taken over our government. And so when you have people in the chat referring to the John Birch Society and, obviously you got a whole slew of other ones, you got the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, what people tend to forget about these so-called conservative organizations is that they're completely flushed with corporate special interest money. Do you think that the Center for American Progress does anything to advance populist left political ideology? Of course not. Neera Tanden is one of the biggest scumbags in all of DC. Everyone knows it. It's not a secret, just like John Bolton may be the biggest scumbag in all of conservative politics in DC. And these are all these are all hired goons, if you will, for the corporate cause. Unfortunately, as you know, this makes up the overwhelming majority of people in Washington, DC. They're not the exception. They are the rule. So our goal is to figure out how to bring the exceptions together to make us the rule, which is why, as Jen and I have been working on behind the scenes, as you know, we're trying to bring the Ron Paul Institute, Daniel McAdams together with Medea Benjamin and Code Pink. And that's just the start. But if we're going to figure out ways to coalesce and make change in this country, it's not going to come from separating ourselves because on a handful of issues, we can't agree. That's not what we're fighting for. We're trying to save our republic right now. And I'd like to think that there's far more people that actually want to save it than don't. The people who don't want to save it are the ones that are sitting up in the ivory towers who really think that there's no way they're ever going to get touched. That's about it. Outside of those guys, I think most people are concerned right now.
Yeah, and the Cato and Heritage types. I mean, you're right. I mean, they have corporate donors knocking down their door. I can assure your viewers that we don't have corporate donors knocking down our door. If they're knocking down our door, they're trying to get us arrested or something, I mean, that's where the money is, man. That's what it's all about. It's corporate welfare. It's welfare for the rich. That's what it's all about. You have I can't tell you how much it irritates me when you see conservatives bragging on the floor of the House. I was able to block this swimming pool for inner city kids. I saved $100,000, and then vote for the next military budget or something.
Right.
I mean, it's just vomitous, really. But that's what they do. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Well, that was the original. Well, no, my original assessment of Doge and what bothers me about it. I have no problem with the idea of efficiency. I think efficiency is a good thing. If you do not start with the Pentagon, you're wasting all of our time. You're wasting our time. And the rest of that is just what it looks like to me is Elon Musk just sitting there as somebody not from this country, just going through our purse and taking out what works for him and getting rid of everything else. Like he's just helping himself to our wallet.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably plenty to blame about him. He seems like an odd person. I find him interesting, but odd. But I mean, I think I would also put a lot of blame on Congress because they got the conversation going. They got the efficiency conversation going, which is great. Of course, the right wing wanted to frame it as those crazy leftists are spending all our money when they love doing it themselves. But Congress didn't step up. And that's when Massie, who's hated, by conservatives in America, or at least a lot of them on Capitol Hill, he said, hey, guys, this is great. But unless we codify this in law, it's just going to go by the wayside. And here we saw it. We saw the omnibus pass that just funded everything up to the old levels. And so it looks like smoke and mirrors. You got to cut that money out.
I think all three are in agreement that Massie should run for the U.S. Senate. I think he can win. And I also think that they're going to throw the entire kitchen sink at him to try to prevent him from coming in. How much greater of an impact do you think his non-corporate civil liberties policy as a representative could take off in an even greater way if he were able to get to the upper chamber?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I hate even to articulate this, but I would worry for his safety if he did something like that. I mean, I think there are people who would want to take him out for that, and it's dangerous to do that. But I think, the Senate as a whole, I know the House very well, but I don't know the Senate as well at all. But I know that as a senator, that you have enormous tools in your toolbox that you can use. I mean, Senator Paul can block things. Senator Paul is pretty good about, crossing the aisle and working with Democrats. I think a Senator Massie would be extremely good in doing that. It just takes a couple senators to do a lot of things. But he's going to have to raise a bunch of money. And I don't know how he's going to be able to do that. I think he could. I think he has a lot of support. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched when he was on with Tucker Carlson. That was an incredible interview.
It was.
Yeah, it really was amazing. I mean, some of the stuff was astonishing. And I've been on the Hill for 12 or 13 years, and I was still astonished by some of the stuff that he said. But I think, he would have a lot more power in the House. And, that's why they focus on someone like him. It was the same thing when Dr. Paul was in the House. He would be the one no vote on something that would overwhelmingly pass. And all the media would call us, why did you vote no? And my colleague Jeff was the press secretary at the time. He said, well, why did you call all the ones who voted yes and ask them why they did it? They just can't stand having any dissent at all.
Does Mr. Paul take exception with how so many politicians today are so concerned with celebrity status, including certain congressional representatives in the Lone Star State? I would imagine that type of behavior probably really disturbs him, because he was a true civil servant in so many ways. Even if you don't agree with his politics, he cared, and he worked his tail off for as long as he was there. But so much of what I think has distorted our political discourse today is that our representatives are not representing the people anymore. There's very few of them that do. Massie's one of them. We have a handful in the left side of politics that are not corporate bought, but overall, it's terrible. We were saying the other day how when Medea Benjamin, I asked her, how many congressional representatives would you say are on the level? She said about 20. It's about 20 of them that are decent people. And then I said to Jen, and so that accounts for about 5% of Capitol Hill. So when you really think about it, it's very small. Yeah. So I'm curious what you think, and perhaps what Mr. Paul has maybe shared his thoughts on, because you guys do a podcast. By the way, links are in the description for Mr. McAdams and his organization, and please subscribe to their podcast with former Congressman Ron Paul. What is your thoughts regarding how our politics have changed so much in terms of the culture over the years?
Yeah, I think, I haven't specifically spoken with him about it, but I know that Dr. Paul is a person who I have rarely heard even utter a curse word. Maybe the D word under his breath when smoke's coming out his ears. So I think, and I can maybe I sound like a boomer, and I'm not. But I really find myself personally depressed when I hear the bad language coming out of people on the Hill. The way they talk to each other. This is on both sides, and I won't name names, but you guys probably know who I'm talking about. But all the foul language, all the lack of decorum, when again, I sound like an old, I guess I am an old guy, I don't know, but when we were working on the Hill, I mean, people that worked hard, like Dennis Kucinich, I mean, he was, like you say about Dr. Paul too, he viewed public service as he was genuinely was in it for public service, and he worked his butt off. He and his team, they were always coming up with, like right now on Yemen, I guarantee he would have had a resolution, a privileged resolution on the floor, and he would have been getting together 5 or 6 members from Republican and Democratic Party, and a war powers resolution, which enables you to put down a privilege resolution, and have it automatically go to the floor. We did that over and over for Iraq, and he would have thrown something like that together. And if it didn't work, he'd do it again the next week or the next week, and that's how it worked. I don't see anyone doing that now. Things seem to be a lot more highly politicized, and I admit I don't watch the House as much as I used to, so I may be just sort of reacting from a distance. But it just seems like everything's out for, I'm going to put a point on this side and a point on this side. And, it's quite depressing.
Yeah, it's completely tribal. Everything is tribal. Everything is theater. Nobody is actually seeking to get anything done. And we're watching the implosion of capital and American empire. I mean, it's really gotten just too pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and there is nobody hoggier than us. And that is what is happening. When you are a civilization that spends more money and resources on conquering other people instead of taking care of your own people, you're losing the plot, right? Like, so it's only a matter of time. But yeah, no, people are just getting nasty and mean and tribalist and name call. It's so ridiculous. But it's because people are so confused and unhappy, and they don't know, and it's uncomfortable, and they're scared, and they don't know what to do with themselves. So most people lack any sort of like reasonable, like emotional maturity to recognize that, and they just start calling names. That's what happens.
So just one final thing about Congress. The other thing about Congress too, is that idle. What is the saying that idle hands, the devil's playground, or something like this? They don't follow regular order anymore, and I'm astonished that they don't do this, because back then when we were on the Hill, I'll say it again, but you had 15 appropriations bills to pass. That was your year. Yeah, you named the post office and blah blah blah, but that was the meat and potatoes of your work. That put each member on equal ground, because when the appropriations bill came to the floor, it was an open rule. As long as it was germane, as long as it was a money amendment, any member could come down and seek time and seek 5 minutes. I move to strike whatever funding from here. And then you could talk about it, and it forced them to work. They don't even do that. They just grandstand all year. And at the end of the year, whoop, golly, I guess I got to do an omnibus, and that's it. They don't have anything to do. I can't, it's hard for me to wrap my head around this crazy thing where they don't have regular order. What's the point? Send them home. Send Musk in there to clean them out. I don't know.
Well, I think a great place to wind down the conversation is about what's going on with the tariffs and why this is becoming everyone has an opinion about how we can improve our economy and our country overall in terms of economics, health, etc. But because of the decisions that have been made, and I think a lot of this just stems from the policies that were passed under Clinton during the 90s, and Newt Gingrich, of course, deserves a hell of a lot of blame as well, with that particular GOP incarnation ultimately led to Bush and Cheney. But this, to me, is a huge part of the problem right here. Just in, from BRICS, China, Japan, and South Korea agree to promote regional trade as Trump tariffs approach.
Good. Keep it up.
Should that surprise anybody?
No, I'm happy about it. It doesn't bother me in the least bit.
Yeah, the whole BRICS is a product of us saying, you better not use our dollar. You are bad guys. And they say, okay, we'll find another way. Hey, don't you stop using our dollar. It's
exactly.
Yeah, they're all like, don't threaten us with a good time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they don't care. And you know what? Honestly, I personally do not need my country to be the world hegemon. I do not care what language my oligarch speaks. So to me, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. But the fact that the hubris on the people that lead this country to think that you could just get away with this forever and every other country is just going to sort of kowtow to you and just go and beg for scraps. It's so disgusting. They so have this coming.
I'm really concerned about the tariffs, because the tariffs also hurt working people the most. People that don't have a lot of money, they go to Walmart, and that's where you get stuff that's cheap. And people that don't have a lot of money, they need cheap stuff. It's just how it works. So if you are Elon Musk and there's a 20% tariff on shoes coming from China, you're not going to notice, because you don't even know how much shoes cost in the first place. But if you're a working family struggling to survive and you go into Walmart and things are 20% higher and your paycheck hasn't increased because they don't increase, it's gonna be an absolute nightmare for people. Even just buying a car, like $4,000 or $5,000 more expensive with higher interest rates. It's again, it's like it is inflation. Tariffs are inflation, and it always hurts the poorest the most.
Yeah. And let's not forget that what will also happen is, don't ever think that those corporations don't take an opportunity to win even more so off of what would be a natural inflation. So anytime there's something like COVID, which of course did affect the supply chain, but yet we know that's not what the reason was for all those cost increases for as long as they were, that it's just they will take every opportunity to kick people when they're down. So it's always sort of like exponential how it affects people. And as bad as it's going to get, that's what needs to happen for enough people to be in the streets and say enough is enough. You need to keep creating more and more people that have nothing left to lose, because otherwise nothing is going to change. We're not voting our way out of this. So, that's just the reality. And the level of violence, as I say over and over again, is dictated by the oppressor, not the oppressed. So, this is the level of violence, and this is what the ruling class has determined would be appropriate. That's where we are.
Yep. And it's only going to get worse because we're not seeing any reason to just kind of like get off the tracks at this point. That's
No.
our concern, you know?
Are those poops? Is somebody doing poop emojis?
Well, if anybody's spamming the chat, they will get blocked. Okay, you're blocked.
Why are they poop emojis?
That's that. We see. This is the thing.
All right.
There's nothing wrong. You know this, Daniel. You can comment. You can chastise. You can be nasty. You could call me a prick. You could do whatever you want. I don't care.
No, Brett's right. Brett's right. Woo-hoo-hoo. Where know you've made it when you get spam trolls.
If you spam the chat, there is no conversation. There is no warning.
No, we get rid of that. We don't have that. We don't want that. That's just stupid. But I was first I could have like, is that poops?
Yeah. I guess they don't like you very much, Mr. McAdams, but that's okay because we like you.
Oh, I think they were doing it when I was talking. They were doing it when I was talking. It was me.
All right, so I have to ask, I don't think we've discussed this before, but I am curious because it does seem that if there is an issue that we should be able to agree on, it's healthcare. We are advocates for single payer. We think it's the most economically feasible and sensible way to do this. It is exactly what DOGE is supposed to be doing, which is cutting out all the waste, fraud, and abuse. The for-profit middlemen have no reason to exist. If a doctor is capable of making $1 million a year, like Mr. Paul's son, who happens to be an eye doctor by trade, he actually does have a profession that doesn't involve him having to call himself a politician. If he is a good enough eye doctor to make $1 million a year, that should never be an issue. What should be an issue is whether we have these for-profit middlemen like Cigna, like Aetna, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, like United. They don't need to exist. Just like we don't need to live in a country where how many hundreds of thousands of people had to die because Big Pharma has such a stranglehold over our government that they thought it would be necessary to try to give every person in this country the vaccine, when in reality, the only people who needed to take it were those that were in vulnerable categories, like people who had pre-existing conditions like diabetes. That, to me, more than anything else, if we want to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, having a single-payer healthcare system, to me, would be a great way to do that. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on health policy other than I have to pay my own insurance, and I hate it because it's unbelievably expensive. And the care is not that great, to be honest. But I know that, I mean, see, the whole thing about like sort of talking like in terms of cross philosophy is that there are some points where you can say we agree on the ultimate goal. There may be different ways of getting to it, and let's have that conversation. So I think this is one of those cases. I don't have a prescription on how to fix healthcare. I'm terrified of doctors anyway. But I think, ultimately, you're right to a degree, because what do these big corporations do? They manipulate government to their benefit. And if they don't have the ability to do that, then you have something different taking over. So, it's a long conversation. and I have some pesto I have to make, or I'm going to be in trouble here at home. So maybe we can reserve it for a future discussion.
We can't
Yeah.
thank you enough, and we thank you for what you do. This is where the meeting of the minds has to happen. The biggest issue in our country today, bar none, is corporate special interests have taken over our government, period. There is no other issue. Everything is interconnected to that one singular issue. There are no party lines. There is simply those that control everything, which is a very small cabal of people. And then it's the rest of us who have to fight to survive to try to save this republic. I'd like to think you are on the side of saving the republic, Mr. McAdams. I think we are too. So if we can continue to cross-collaborate, I'm going to put an email together for both you and Medea. There will be others as well. Let's figure out ways to work together going forward. And we certainly hope to have you on the podcast again in the future.
Thanks so much, guys.
It's good to see you.
Too. It's great to see you again, Jen. Take care, guys.
Bye.
See you, brother.
Later. Bye-bye.
Great conversation. Great guy. And that actually is a great transition. Colin, if you have the Luigi Mangione story, I want to pull that up because I think
Luigi.
Luigi.
I honestly think we could have the segment is what I refer to as Mangione monetary theory.
Mangione monetary theory.
Yeah, that's where these people are wanting this to go, clearly, because that's what's happening. Because what we were just talking about, all those prices going up and more people suffering and people not able to get what they need and people that's all that is. That's Mangione monetary theory. That's what the ruling class has decided would be our economic, plan here. That's their economic plan.
Well, I
don't think they realize how that's going to go.
I don't know how to shuffle this story. I'm going to try, but I know that maybe you could do it on your end, Jen. So
what do you want me to do?
So there's two stories there. There's one about DeSantis, and then the other one is about Mangione. So I'm not sure if you could, kind of like move one and the other.
I don't know which one. I see one that this.
Not that one. It's the other one. But I don't know if there's like a way to move it.
Humiliated. That's how a Bay Area veteran.
No, that's not. No, it's
I don't know what you want me to do.
Colin did not make this easy for us. All right, I'm going to have to pull the article myself. So give me 1 second.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know what you're trying to do.
Save your promotions. Okay, now you're getting blocked. This is not going to.
I did it. I'll deal with that. You figure out what you're trying to do.
Don't you people have anything better to do?
If it's real people or they're being paid. You know what I mean? Like there's like groups that I think that I don't think it's just normal people sitting around and being like, I think I'm going to sit here and just hit this emoji button 1,000,000 times in a chat. I don't think that's a thing.
I think that's a fair point. I will not disagree.
It's not. That's not normal.
Yeah, the only
blame
problem.
Colin is what Travers says. Blame Colin. When all else fails, just blame Colin.
No, Colin has a life. He's got things to do. We're not going to keep him. Oh God, honestly, it's like, can any of these websites not be completely messed up? Because there's so many ads that run. Like
I'm just curious what story it is we're talking about.
So this is actually a very good story.
As long as it's not the one that you have down there with Bill Maher.
No, we'll get to that in a minute.
I hate talking about him.
But this story is actually pretty important. So,
okay.
Luigi Mangione has inspired a ballot initiative in the state of California. The ballot proposition would effectively require health insurers to cover all treatments at any price. It is a direct shot at United Health. Now, perhaps this is a better way to go about trying to get CalCare passed in California, because they've had the bill. The bill exists to have a single-payer health system in the state of California, which has the economy capable, a state economy capable of handling a single-payer health system. And so this is a proposal that would involve his name and likeness have appeared on T-shirts, graffiti, and in so many memes. Now Luigi Mangione, the alleged, I didn't see nothing, neither did you, Jen, of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson might have his name end up in a California law as well. Wouldn't that be ironic? I think it's very deserving.
That makes a whole lot more sense than giving the IDF a Nobel Peace Prize. So,
Jen, you're asking for way too much. Over the weekend, California news outlets reported that a proposed ballot initiative titled the Luigi Mangione Access to Healthcare Act has been submitted to the California AG's office for review. Oh, at least Kamala Harris isn't there right now. The proposed initiative's title is predictably drawing a lot of attention, as it is named after an alleged the proposed initiative's author, retired LA-based attorney Paul Eisner. How much you want to bet he's anti-Zionist, Jen? I got a feeling. I got a feeling. I got a good feeling.
know. Okay.
Says that that's kind of the whole point. It is getting the attention it needs because sometimes things require publicity. I would agree. In fact, some of the best bill writers on the Hill typically make bills have pretty attractive acronyms because that's what draws attention to it. While it has certainly attracted publicity, the controversy over the proposed ballot initiative's working title has distracted people from its even worse substance. Eisner's proposal states that no insurer may delay, deny, or modify any medical procedure or medication recommended by a treating physician, or even demand reduced payment for such treatments, if doing so could result in disability, death, permanent disfigurement, or the loss of reduction or any bodily function.
What are the odds that this passes, though? Like that, I don't know what their state legislature looks like enough.
That is a great question. But you know what I'm reading when I'm reading a bill like that? I'm reading a whole bunch of line items that needs to be checked off at any one time. Is this person telling the truth on this? Is this person telling the truth on that?
All they're doing is adding a layer to the bureaucracy. Of course.
That's it.
That's all it is. You're just adding another layer to the bureaucracy, to the middleman with their handout.
So you know what the solution is? I think I just mentioned it. And the person who runs the Ron Paul Institute couldn't dispute my point. The only solution is a single-payer healthcare system. That is it. That eliminates all the waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, if we're smart, and I think you and I have a decent amount of brain cells together, although you've smoked a few of them away, but I think you're still pretty sharp.
I try.
I think if we were really advocating consistently about how single-payer is Doge in healthcare form, that is what it is.
Of course. Well, that is yet another area that doesn't benefit them to cut. That's why Doge is not it's not the Department of Government Efficiency. It's the Department of gutting what other people need. They're not making the government in any way more efficient. They're just cutting services for people that need services. So that's not, you can call something whatever you want. You can make up whatever ridiculous acronym you want to make up. What they're doing is cutting resources for vulnerable people. That's what they're doing. Is it also eliminating some waste? Probably. I'm sure there's plenty of waste. There was waste in the Department of Education. There's waste all over. There's no shortage of waste.
It has been determined.
They're not in this to get rid of. They're not in this to make the government more efficient. They're in this to line their pockets.
Of course. But one thing that has been indisputable, and this has been brought up, I believe it was the Cato Institute. If you guys can correct me on this if I may be wrong, but I believe it was the Cato Institute, which is one of the most powerful corporate conservative think tanks in all of DC, that it was determined that even according to their calculation, if we were to implement a single-payer healthcare system in the United States, it would save in excess of $500 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse every single year. That's incredible. And that, to me, if we're going to push forward, has got to include that type of messaging. If you believe in Doge, and you believe that Doge's principles, which were put, remember, Doge was put on the books in 2009 by Barack Obama. This has been around for a long time. Have more connective axons. Sable, it depends on how much we're smoking. Is that not fair to say? I mean,
but it's a very relative term. Point is, I've gotten a lot of love in the comment section about your comment about my cannabis usage. Honestly, I think it keeps me sharper.
I think it's fine.
Like the little things, definitely I forget details. Like I do forget details, but I don't know that I ever was that sharp about them. But it makes me so much more capable of going down the rabbit holes that I go down and researching things that I research and really being able to understand and focus on what I'm looking at. And so in that way, to me, I think it makes me smarter. But yeah, I do lose a lot of details. I'm also pushing 54. So, you know.
Well, I'm here to back you up. I think cannabis should absolutely be legal, and we should have a single-payer health system, period. All the signs point to that is what we need. Luigi Mangione he's like the Dark Knight. I've been saying that from the beginning. It's not a question of it being him, the person. Luigi is a symbol of a greater fight that we are trying to undertake right now, which is this broken republic that we have in front of us. It's probably always been broken for the average person. It works for the people who pull the levers of power, certainly, as Jen has said. It's working as it was designed to work for the people that control.
Always. And they're further expanding it. That's what cop cities are for. They know that what's coming.
But you have always had a way with words. And we are in the hog stage. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. We've had a lot of fat pigs over the years. Unfortunately, one of those fat pigs might make it to Congress tomorrow, but he looks more like a hog. So hopefully Randy Fine gets the shock of a lifetime and Josh Wheel gets into Congress, but that's a diverted comment. Point being,
Josh Wheel made it, I wish they had said his name. But it was on Democracy Now! There was an interview, and he was with Jonathan Nichols was on with Amy Goodman talking about what's going on in the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin and about the 2 special elections down here. And they were talking about the Democrat running, and they put up Josh's picture, but they didn't really say, hey, guys, go support Josh Wheel.
Which unfortunately is a sign of just how difficult it is to win these races in politics, because this really is an anti-Randy Fine race. And the only reason I do believe that Josh actually has a puncher's chance of winning tomorrow is because Randy Fine is on the outs with Ron DeSantis. And I do think that matters.
Randy Fine is on the outs with a lot of people.
Yes, but if you're on the outs with the governor, who basically can kind of make or break.
So you think that because of that and the fact that DeSantis probably hasn't gone remotely out of his way to help in any way, like I don't think he's working against him, but he's definitely not helping him is what you're saying.
Well, according to our friend, who we won't say who, but just
we won't mention any names.
Yeah.
Not to mention any names, but Josh and I share campaign manager.
So apparently Trump's team deployed people down to the district over the weekend for Randy. And according to him, it's actually a sign of weakness, and it's actually a bad sign that they did it so late. Now, the fact that they felt that they had to do that is also a reflection of how bad his situation might actually be. Now, does that mean he's going to lose? Not necessarily. But do I think that they sent people down because their internal polling shows that the race could be very well competitive? Yeah, I think that's very possible.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have bothered if they didn't think that they needed to do it, but I still
they're not doing anything. Yeah, they're not doing anything here for Jimmy Petronas and his race. Jimmy Petronas is a likable guy. He's actually done a decent job as CFO, and he's going to get into Congress without a blip on the radar screen.
And after watching what I saw with Amy Goodman and John Nichols, they were talking about both races like they were both sort of up in the air. And I was thinking
they are absolutely not both up in the air.
No,
and the
because
audacity of them to
know.
even do that is just silly.
Well, they are up. Well, both of those are special elections. So they were talking about them like, we'll see if the Democrats could pick up seats and not really making it be as unrealistic in your district, because you have somebody like Randy Fine, who is just a dislikable human being that's running against, someone who's likable, versus in your district where the guy's likable, right? Like, I mean, it's apples and oranges.
Oh, I agree. And I also think that this is also, in some ways, it could be the worst thing that happens to the Democrats. But there was one thing that a gentleman who I will also not name, who's one of the few decent consultants that I know in politics, he even said specifically about the races in Florida, the fact that they have pumped $10 million into these congressional races and the likelihood that they're going to lose both of them is still the odds-on chance of what is ultimately going to happen tomorrow. There has been no money, zero, that has been allocated to building any type of ground-up support in the state of Florida for the grassroots elements of the Democratic Party. Doesn't exist.
No. If Josh gets in, it will be just of the perfect storm that happened, but it is certainly not indicative of the public opinion about Democrats in general, and certainly not Democrats in Florida.
I agree.
It really will be an anomaly.
I also think from Josh's perspective, if he's smart, and I'd like to think he's fairly smart, he will recognize that if he is able to win tomorrow, he is you. He should use the next 2 years to do exactly what you said you would do if you beat Debbie.
I hope so. But that's what AOC said. But that's what Alex said too.
Because here's why. If Josh wins, he's a one-term congressman. The best thing
but does he know that? Does he know that?
I'm sure that our friend knows that. Does he know that? I think he's at least somewhat hip to the fact that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, he'll get one term. He'll get one term.
He'll get what he could do if he wins and he does it well. If he does well and he gets his one term, he could actually potentially run for governor in 26. Not in 26. Well, yeah, but even still, he could run for state. What I'm saying is if he wants to continue this path, but in terms of being able to continue it in the 6th congressional district, no. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to stop an absolute psychopath from getting into Congress. But
then make no mistake, the Republicans will get that seat back.
Yes, they will get it back no matter what. But the point is, what are you going to do? How are you going to treat these next 2 years if you're able to pull this off?
The problem is, how entangled is he now with the Democrats, the people that are now have been helping him fund and have been supporting him? So, which also has been having them put out certain messaging for fundraising that is very lib. And so if he gets in and he spends the next 2 years putting out that kind of messaging, not only is he's going to get replaced anyway, likely he'll get replaced anyway, but he will have spent the 2 years doing that. We need to appeal to this group or that group and not doing anything. And that's the concern.
I agree. That is the concern. But I hope he's sensible enough to realize that this is just a perfect storm situation. Once in a great while, it happens. Randy Fine is a loathsome, despicable scumbag.
He really is. If you don't know, Randy Fine is one of our state legislators, and he's a complete piece of crap. He's a complete piece of crap. And so he's very disliked, and he's disliked by a lot of his own partisan people.
He is. And he freely displays that Israel flag front and center without even the American flag. He puts the Israel flag ahead of the Florida flag, and he doesn't even use an American flag. That's what's in his office. This is a guy, he's fulfilling a role. He has a role. He enjoys it. And
elaborate, please. Wanker Tanker. This is the guy who is the spearheaded the resolution in the Florida legislature where anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are the same thing. This is the guy who is anti-choice. This is a guy who is anti-civil liberties. This is a guy who does not support cannabis. This is not someone who is in favor of any sort of progress that most people support. So, and he's just nasty.
Extremely. Well,
does that elaborate enough?
No, unfortunately, Clara, it's not the IDF uniform guy. We got another one.
Brian Mast.
Yeah, he's just south of where Randy Fine would be a congressman. Just
right,
south.
But Randy Fine would be that too. It would be another one of those in Florida. It's always Florida, Peter.
I'll tell you what, if our friend is able to pull this off, that should be the next thing on his agenda. Figure out a way to go after Mast. That'd be the next one.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Probably not, but it's a thought. Unfortunately, Mast has been there for, I think he's in his 4th term now.
No, and the leg gimmick is good. The leg gimmick is good. You can't really, it's hard to outdo the legs.
Do you enjoy these conversations? Are you having a good time?
I am.
Philip Blair?
Yes, here's hoping. Here's hoping. They need to go away.
I think there is a chance. And guys, please don't let Phil be the only person supporting our channel this evening. Phil, thank you so much for the $10. In the first place, God made idiots. That was for practice. Then he made school boards. Mark Twain. Interesting. Bennett was a school superintendent. Prime example of why our schools are hell for neurodivergent people. And what I will also say, which I think is true, Jen, there is also a hell of a lot of bureaucracy within the teachers' unions. And I think in many cases, you get people that end up becoming superintendents that were never even teachers. They were just part of, school education
politics. It's just politics, right? They're just in political. They're in educational politics. I have to say something. This is just my personal opinion, okay? And for what it's worth, police and teachers, they don't need to be unionized. They just don't. Well, first of all, I don't believe police should even exist, but that's another story. But those are not unions like we've needed unions in this country. Now, teachers at this point have needed unions because we underpay them and treat them like crap. Whole other problem that needs to be addressed in another way. But them being unionized has failed to help them in any significant way, certainly not down here. So those unions, teachers' unions, are not functioning in any capacity that is really helping their teachers. Great. It's just not. They keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So to me, I don't consider teachers in the same category as other groups of people that we traditionally are when we refer to labor organizing. They're not. They don't go along with them a lot of the time. They're their whole own thing. And police is very much as a police unions should not be a thing. That shouldn't be a thing either for different reasons. But anyway.
And also from Phil, thank you for the $5. Brian Thompson.
Travers will agree to disagree on the police thing. I do not agree with that. I believe in abolition. I don't support that anymore. If more police made us safer, we'd be the safest country in the world.
I think we need law enforcement, but we could debate how that should look going forward. Brian Thompson equals Guy Fawkes. We know our friends over in the UK observe Guy Fawkes Day. I condemn violence, including corporate violence. I guess that's a tongue-in-cheek type commentary. Well, if you like our commentary and you are so inclined, like Mr. Blair, don't let him all stand by his lonesome. We like any and all support that can come. Make sure to go over to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5.
I'm not going to ask. I'm going to assume you did it.
Yes, I did. You could become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. Any and all support is tremendously appreciated, as documented by the live stream that Jen was able to attend and was very appreciative to attend with Butch Ware, Guy Christensen, Anthony Rogers Wright, Jason Call, Gabe Medina, and the creme of creme, Fred Hampton Jr.
I was on a panel with Fred Hampton Jr., but which would have been kind of intimidating just in and of itself, but I got to speak right after him. How's that? I got to speak in between Fred Hampton Jr. and Butch Ware. Yeah.
It's the thought that counts, wanker. I don't know if you're trying to draw funny signs and whatnot, but if you are so inclined to contribute and you are having a problem, there is one other place you can go. You are able to go over to Cash App, $Jen Change. That is also where you can go to chip in if you are so inclined. And as
I think people are interested. I would think you guys could probably catch that on Butch's on his campaign channel. I would bet they would have.
We replayed it on our channel.
Oh, we replayed it too. Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, I'm on top of things, Jen.
Yes, you are.
Make sure, yeah. So, progressive lefty with the $10. Thank you so much. I work with a Yank that is all for dropping things on women and children because she is pro-war. I had to walk away. I would have as well.
It's very lonely sometimes, in certain spaces. It's very lonely. Like,
It
this
is.
is not an easy position to be in when the rest of the world is sort of like, watching people like Rachel Maddow or Jake Tapper or any of these people. They have no idea what's going on.
The director of the Ron Paul Institute, who does a weekly podcast with Ron Paul, wants to get together with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink to figure out how better to utilize the anti-war movement, especially against Israel. You tell me why the hell we need political labels in this country. We don't need shit. What we need is each other, and we need to be working together to get where we're trying to go, which is to a place where we can actually save our constitutional republic.
What does that say about us? How cool is that about us? That, like, our last episode was Medea Benjamin, and this episode is from the head of the Ron Paul Institute.
Chris Garrett, thank you so much. You're not only
Always.
a tremendous supporter of our channel, but also of Status Quo, which is where real journalism is found, including our wonderful producer who handles both channels. For those of you wondering what we have ahead, you're going to love it, of course. Thursday night, our good friend, Margaret Kimberly, will be
I saw that. I was very excited.
So she'll be coming on to talk about New York politics, specifically what is going on with this very hot New York City mayoral race. Things are really heating up. A lot of people are on pins and needles right now because it looks like, I think his name is Zoran. I think that's how you say his name. He's a state legislator up in Albany, but he is running for mayor, and he's definitely got some progressive chops that make him semi-viable. Will that conflict with the bouting of the heads between current Mayor Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo? We can only hope. But Andrew Cuomo is going to be the next mayor. That hurts to do that. And one other important guest we also want to mention, which we've mentioned before, you guys can mark your calendar now. Brianna Joy Gray will be joining us next Monday. So for those of you who wanted to know when we would be having her on, you now know. And we will have many other wonderful guests coming on, hopefully some more authors. There's a lot of very interesting books coming out right now. I sent some information over to Rachel Jen about a book that I think you'd be interested in.
Okay.
It's very good. Dom, back in hot. We need a real leader who can actually lead a movement like the working class versus the ruling class. Bernie is just riling people up, but the people need direction, mobilization. Which people names do you think fit that role? If you have not seen the live stream that Jen did over the weekend, go check out Butch Ware, who's running for governor of. He's running to be the governor of California.
If you're interested in, and again, this is not me thinking that electoral politics is solving the problems. That's not the case. But because of the way California is, because of their jungle primary, because of all the different variables, this is an opportunity to really stick it to the duopoly in a way that this country has not seen. Because for a state like California to have a non-duopoly, a non-Democrat governor would be amazing. And that is something that that executive position comes great power. And that is someone who would be that would just be special. So I would get behind that. That's the kind of leader, that's the kind of person that might be able to actually do something with the Green Party, take them from being tree huggers to revolutionaries. And I know that's what he wants to do. And, and that is what he's inspired to do.
Yes, I would definitely recommend, if there's anybody that you are looking for to support in politics right now that I think has the opportunity to really change the narrative. And listen, you guys know I'm not some hippy dippy. I'm not a Green Party person.
Hey,
but I can tell. Yeah,
don't mock the hippies.
I am not mocking them. I'm just saying I'm not one of them. However, do I support Butch Ware for governor of California? 1,000%. And I will be contributing to his campaign. So I would recommend that you all check him out. He's got a lot of good going for him. I think he's going to raise a few $1 million. And if he does, he's going to be a real pain in the ass, which is exactly what we need right now.
I'll tell you, Henry, when I see like tree hugging revolutionaries, it brings this thing to mind. I don't know if everyone's aware, but I I don't know how long ago it was that I went and participated in a protest in Atlanta for Stop Cop City. And one of the big things that has happened up there was the cops killed, long before I was there, they killed a activist named Tortuguita. And for the life of me, I cannot remember. It was a kid. He was like 19 years old, completely unarmed, and was shot while sitting on the ground. So, and when I see things about, revolutionaries standing up, and I see tree huggers turning into revolutionaries, it's like unfortunate that that's where we are. It's unfortunate that that's where we are. I wish that just tree hugging hippies could just, have enough protests, and that would just solve all the problems. And that if we just did that and we just voted for really, progressive things, that'll work. It just isn't working. And so the idea that somebody like Butch has to come along, who is somebody who lives by the words of like Malcolm X and people like Huey P. Newton, and the people that were really about recognizing, this system isn't working for us. We need to go outside the system. Yep. And that's the kind of mindset that we have to have. So it is unfortunate that tree hugging is not sufficient. And that being nonviolent gets you shot while sitting on the ground, because that was literally a tree hippie. He was literally just a man that had set up camp in a tree, just trying to save a protected indigenous area. And he was shot something like 19 or so times, and he was unarmed. He was a kid. Yeah. So, obviously just peacefully protesting isn't working anymore. So it's just, revolution.
I will say, I will. My pen is not working right now, but I'm working on it.
Exactly. Official People's Party. The stoner pokes back. Exactly. Yeah. I'm too angry to be a pacifist anymore.
So apparently today, Bill Maher actually met with Donald Trump. Now, if you guys know anything about the history of Bill Maher with Donald Trump, this is a rivalry that goes back almost a decade. Now, there was a time where Bill Maher used to be funny before he decided that he couldn't push in a direction that compromised his very substantial income. But he was somebody that was very good at going after Donald Trump. In fact, he went after Trump with the insinuation that he was the product of his mother having an affair with an orangutan. If you remember, Trump got so incensed by this that he decided to sue Bill Maher in court for $5 million for slander. The caucasity, as Jen would say, to actually bring such a lawsuit.
No, you're really misusing that word. You're not understanding what it is. I don't think you're understanding what it is. But anyway, go on.
How about the audacity? Is that a better word?
Yes. Well, caucasity is when white supremacy ideology has hubris that knows no bounds and does something so unbelievably obtuse to people that are not part of that white group. That is caucasity.
Yep.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with Bill Maher and Donald Trump. Anyway.
Correct. But this was a very humorous. In fact, when I think of the new rules that I've seen over the years that I enjoyed, and unfortunately I tried to find the clip, I couldn't find it. But this was probably Bill Maher's best moment doing new rules. This was his very best. It was hysterical. They showed a picture of Trump's lawyer, which was a monkey in a suit holding a phone. It was so perfectly done. But those days are long gone. The point is that Bill Maher has gotten more and more corporate and more curmudgeon as he gets up there in age. He may be pushing 70 in another year or two, but he still thinks
he's Sable. I canceled his ass a long time ago too.
Yeah, but he did do a new rules the other day that I actually think was fairly decent when addressing the issue that now exists, which I think a lot of people in the MAGA movement are becoming a lot more hip to as well. Because Trump is not infallible. He's been making a substantial amount of mistakes, especially over the past few weeks. So this is what Mr. Maher had to say the other night.
Finally, new rule to those on the right who keep asking me, Bill, you're so good at roasting the woke nonsense peddlers. Why don't you go all the way and join us? Let me give you the short answer. Because I don't want to live in North Korea. Republican Congressman Addison McDowell wants to name Dulles Airport after Trump. It'll be like other airports, except the international terminal only has departures. Yeah, the Kennedy Center is not something I really care a lot about, but I do care that an American president doesn't see anything wrong with him personally taking it over, or that his communications director, Stephen Chung, said it was justified because Trump, quote, is a virtuoso and is...
This is so ridiculous, though.
And his musical choices represent a brilliant palette of vibrant colors when others often paint in pale pastels.
Wait. Is this serious? Like
Jesus,
Trump is doing
Stephen.
something with the Kennedy Center honors?
Yeah.
Okay,
This is
can
real.
let me explain the levels in which this pisses me off for so many reasons. The Kennedy Center honors concerts are some of the best performances and collaborations that you will ever see, ever. So if he does something that screws with that, I'm going to be like beyond. Like that's how you get to see things like Heart do Stairway to Heaven and just some really cool stuff.
When I think
All right.
about the worst aspects of Donald Trump and the things that he's done, and why I really think his legacy in many ways will never not be tarnished when it comes to how he handled himself in the White House. He has denigrated basically all forms of artistic expression since he's been in power.
But yet he had a problem with that portrait of himself, which is so funny to me.
See, if Colin was here right now, I would say, Colin, could you please bring up that?
So the funny thing is that he obviously had an issue. I forget which state it was or what organization or what was it that had this portrait of Trump. And he said it was such an unflattering picture. Maybe what they should have said is, well, maybe if you didn't cut all of our arts funding, we would have been able to do a better job.
That would have been the best response, because not only has he cut all the arts funding, but I've often said, maybe the blackest mark on Trump in terms of being the commander in chief. Do you know he's the only president who's never had a dog in the White House? The only one.
And I find that very, it's disturbing. But you and I kind of think it's disturbing for people that not to have dogs.
Well, even if he isn't really a dog person, it's like it's tradition. This is tradition that goes back to Washington, and he decided to break it. I ain't throwing you any curveballs here, President Trump, but if I were you, I would have a dog. And if I were you...
But the fact is, this is not the person that should be in any way like crowning himself king of the arts.
Well, not only that, but think about the butt kissing, the booty licking, the fact that Trump has already come out and suggested that he will look into the possibility of running for a third term. Where are the defenders at the gate who will say, no, we don't have a king? The reason we have a king, the reason we're sitting in this predicament that we're in right now, because Trump is acting like a king. Let's be honest. And the biggest reason he is because we're stuck in a two-party clusterfuck of a system that has one party that is basically dead and isn't capable of actually fighting back because they're just as corporate bought and owned as the party that's now in power. It's all fake outrage. It's not.
That's all they do. This is the resistance. This is what the Democratic Party has deemed good resistance to what they claim is fascism.
And keep in mind, Judith Pierre, Katie Porter has already made it crystal clear.
And herein is the problem.
Crystal clear that if Kamala Harris gets in the race, she's out. She will just drop out. What is the point of running?
Especially in a state with jungle primaries.
Or in a state like California. It's one thing if you're running statewide in Massachusetts. You're running statewide in California. You know what kind of money and effort and absolute commitment it takes to do something like this? You're going to be running for 4 or 5 months, and all of a sudden Kamala's going to get in at the end of the summer, and you're just going to pack up your tents. What are you going to say to the people that invested all that time, money, and effort to help you? The Democratic Party is dead, and that is why Trump is able to wield power like a king. We'll continue.
And don't get any in your hair. Introduced to make Trump's birthday a holiday and put him on currency and Mount Rushmore. This is not what we do here, guys. He's still in office, for God's sake. Can we see how it turns out before we put him on a stamp?
And
Why?
you know,
Obama got a peace prize before he started drone bombing people.
that's a great point. But you just know that Trump, if he's going to have a stamp, it's going to look something like that.
Oh my God.
At Trump's
We
speech
are in the
this month to a
Biff-Tannen
joint
world.
session of Congress, he claimed the government had spent $8 million making mice transgender. It did not. The $8 million was for transgenic mice, mice that were being genetically modified to study how hormone treatments affect human health. We were splicing their genes, not making them compete in women's sports. Transgender mice is crazy, but it's not crazier than 1,000 other things that our government has funded over the years, like developing origami condoms or studying why chimps fling their feces, okay? No, what's worrisome about it is that nobody around the president would dare tell him that transgenic is not transgender. It makes you think that if Trump came down one day and his fly was open, Republicans wouldn't tell him. They'd just start showing up with their fly open. Which
That
brings
I
me to
actually
America,
agree with.
suddenly saying to our closest friend in the world, you know what? Fuck Canada for no particular reason.
Why was that Tom Cruise thing up there?
Well, basically what they're talking about is that the cult-like behavior of the people around Trump has gotten so bad that it's reminiscent of what it's like being in the Church of Scientology.
Oh, I still don't like that they put up the daughter, though. That kind of was
Well, Tom Cruise apparently has no relationship with his daughter that he had with
correct, because she
Maher.
wants nothing to do with him. That's her choice. That's why it bothers me that they would even show her. Mind your
I don't
business.
know. They didn't
people.
show her. They just showed him.
No,
I
they
don't
showed a picture of her.
No, that was him.
Wasn't
Look.
that her behind him?
No.
It was like both. All right, go. We don't have to see it again. I thought it was showing yeah.
The fact that we feel that we have to antagonize Canada,
It's really not. Let me tell you, our Canadian tourism is taking a huge hit. Huge hit. And while that might not affect a lot of people, it does affect a lot of small towns in places that would get a lot of those tourists.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And you know where a lot of them are going, and I know this personally, they're going to Mexico instead of here. They're going to places like Cabo.
Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I do think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're talking about leadership in the two respective nations being completely juxtaposed. Somebody like Trudeau is as bad as it gets compared to somebody like Scheinbaum.
You know he's gone, right? And you know that the new person is actually on the same page with her. So they're going to go and have themselves a jolly old time and they're going to just leave us out of the fun.
And it couldn't be any better. I mean, think about it. What should have been the Bernie Sanders era over the past decade, starting in 2015, 2016, is effectively what's happening in our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the south. The things that Canada and Mexico will now enjoy for the foreseeable future, especially since we are going full isolation mode here with Trumpism run amok, that in many ways is all on that blood is firmly on the hands of Wasserman Schultz and the Democratic establishment who allowed us to get to this point. It is all on their fucking heads, as far as I can see.
Let this finish, but I have thought of a really good example to tell you about caucasity.
I don't know for sure where Jesse Waters of Fox News stood on invading Canada 12 weeks ago, but I'm guessing it wasn't on his mind at all. But now his message for Canada is, the fact that they don't want us to take them over makes me want to invade. But Canada isn't threatening us. For God's sakes, their flag is a leaf. But now we have Lauren Boebert saying we must rally behind President Trump to secure his third term. Something Steve Bannon is advocating for as well. And you just know that soon the entire Republican Party will be on this page. Okay, there's no fuzz on this. It's as clear as 1, 2, 3.
Talk about
get
trying
2
to
terms,
create and
not
foment
more.
hysteria. Talk about trying to propagandize. That's like you're trying to totally foment fear because you've run out of things now, and that's what you're going to have to do. is start threatening that he's going to stay for a third term. That's going to be their fear tactic.
And
Do you
the
see
other-
progressive lefty, our Canadian friend here, is confirming what I was just saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Who can blame
I don't
him?
blame you. I wouldn't come here. It's obnoxious. Okay, so that whole episode with the entire thing from start to finish, from Trump's first mention of Greenland coming out of his mouth, from the first time that nation's name came out of his mouth, to Vance walking back on the plane, that all of that, that is caucasity. The absolute that kind of, we're just going to get them one way or another. And it's just so off the wall obscene. That's caucasity. That's it.
If you want to crystallize in a few words how we've gotten here and what the Trump administration is at this point, leave it to our good friend and fellow supporter of Butch Ware's run for the governorship in California, Rothbone.
Oh, you got Rothbone?
Take her away, baby.
I get this. What? The defense secretary, the CIA director, the national security advisor, the secretary of state, and the treasury secretary were all caught in a group chat admitting to illegal war crimes. Okay. Even worse, they were celebrating them. And how were they caught? Because they let a reporter from the Atlantic in on the group chat accidentally. I am outraged that they let a reporter into the group chat. No, the story is that these government officials in the Trump administration are war criminals. No, but that reporter, though. Hey, bucko, that's sensitive classified information. But they bombed an apartment building and killed a bunch of innocent people. Yeah, but like, where was that? In Yemen. See? I can't believe they did this over Signal. Are you kidding me? What if the Russians or the Chinese were listening? Are you insane? This is bad. You've got to be shitting me. That reporter guy.
That's what I do. That is like, his things are so funny because that's kind of what we're dealing with. That's how ridiculous this is.
I think what we should do as an idea is,
oh my God,
when we have Mr. Ware come back on our podcast, I think we should do it as another collective roundtable of people. And I think we should invite Rothbone to join us because I know he is a big supporter of Butch, as are we. Maybe Guy Christensen, maybe a few others. Let's do what we can.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Is that guy stoned? His eyes looked it.
Well, Rothbone definitely likes the cannabis.
He's a professor. He's a teacher, you know. He's just great. We've had him on, guys. You could go back and that was a while ago.
We're gonna finish our podcast the way that we started it.
We're going back to red, white, and blue land.
We're not going to red, white, and blue land. But what we are going to talk about is how we've made it our mission on the domestic side of politics in the United States that we are going to push for, and thank you, Progressive Lefty, again with the $2. That was
It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And that is one of the reasons that I like this community here and why I like Punch Up. When I'm always in the Punch Up chat on Sunday and Wednesday, it's like there's only so many people that really are capable of understanding some of this stuff.
Well, what I think we can all understand, which is why the state of Israel, in terms of foreign policy, is our top priority. Just like on the domestic side, single-payer healthcare through Mangione monetary theory is our top priority. Yep. So, say what you want about Candace Owens. We have a lot of disagreements with her in various aspects of politics, especially her commentary about the environment, which I think stems in many ways from the fact that she had a relationship with the Koch brothers working at Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, if you will. And so her policy about being a Christian, though, seems to be pretty consistent. And this is going back even before October 7th. And so when it was put into action as a member of the Daily Wire, she made a conscious decision that she was not going to lie for money. Ironically, the Daily Wire is on the outs. They have suffered so much economically as a result of Mr. Shapiro making
Poor
it
Benny boy.
the Israel Wire, as it should. The Daily Israel Wire is what it really should be called. And so as a result, they are on the outs. But Candace continues to push the angle that maybe the Israel lobby's control over our political discourse is actually a lot worse than you think. And why is that? Because somebody like RFK, who has a number of good ideas politically, I personally think, is also somebody that has a lot of bad ideas. And the worst of them all is his absolute mentally controlled.
It's unhinged. I'm sorry, like his thoughts, his feel like he's with they're unhinged. These are not
towards Israel is not without harsh criticism, but also a great deal of skepticism. Why is he like this? Why is he constantly taking photographs with Shmuley? Why is Shmuley constantly taking photographs with every single politician that he can get in front of a camera, whether it's Cory Booker all the way to Volodymyr Zelensky? Why is that? Because you're going to see why right now.
Is no halfway decent person in the world who thinks I would like to become the president of the United States. In order for me to get there, I think this guy, Rabbi Shmuley, would be well suited to be on my campaign. It's always been very strange that RFK Jr. is always has Rabbi Shmuley in the background.
Yes. When is this clip from? Because we've been talking about this for like well over a year at this point.
There are so many photos of Shmuley, not just with RFK, but with many others that you can find on social media right now. Very reminiscent of a similar pose. Tulsi Gabbard is in photos with him.
I agree, Travers. Aaron definitely handed Shmuley his arse on Pierce. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
We need to get you on Piers Morgan. Need to get you on that.
What?
Need to get you on Piers Morgan.
Going on that. I'm not going on Piers Morgan to get in a ridiculous argument with some lib. Don't be ridiculous.
Especially given the allegations that were made against him by Michael Jackson. He's a very problematic character. Again, that is just obvious point number one, which you will eventually come back to. I do not believe in the Kennedy curse. Everyone talks about the Kennedy curse. Oh, there have been plane crashes and JFK got shot and RFK got shot. I don't believe in a curse. I am, however, a believer in the idea that the CIA has kept incredibly close tabs on this family since they shot JFK. Who is they? Who is they? Since they shot JFK. Okay. The entire world owes him tremendous gratitude, but I have never been under any illusions that RFK Jr. was not in some capacity being controlled. That has never, as soon as I saw him with Rabbi Shmuley and he couldn't explain why that was, and as soon as I was watching his interviews with Dave Smith and he couldn't explain why he couldn't lodge even one critique of Israel, I got very suspicious. Without getting into further details at this moment about what I know and what I have been told, I can tell you that one name that kept coming up is Amaryllis Fox. Now, I mean, I've never heard of Amaryllis Fox. Tell you a little.
I could tell you who Amaryllis Fox is.
I don't know who that is.
So I actually hung out, if you will, with Amaryllis Fox for about, I don't know, an hour at RFK's official launch event in Philadelphia.
Okay, but who is she in relation to the campaign or whatever?
So Amaryllis Fox is a former CIA agent, but we all know that you never actually leave the CIA. Do you, Jen?
So she's a spook is what you're saying. And she's just hanging out there with him, or is she part of his team or what?
She was his campaign manager.
Oh.
And she is married to his son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a family affair.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Quite.
Okay.
About
Let's
her.
hear
She's actually quite extraordinary what she's accomplished in her life. She's a former CIA officer.
They have to stop saying former. How about just like not currently?
Well, I mean, it really needs to be treated the same as like when we've talked about it with Marines. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Once a spook, always a spook.
Born Amaryllis Thornburg, she attracted the CIA's attention when she was really young while she was pursuing her master's degree. When, after the September 11th attacks, she created an algorithm to identify local terrorist safe havens. Her Wikipedia goes on to say that Fox became one of the CIA's youngest female officers at age 22, assigned to quote unquote non-official cover, which entailed her living abroad with fake identities and no diplomatic protection. She has said she assumed the cover of an art dealer and focused on preventing terror organizations from acquiring, you guessed it, weapons of mass destruction. Every time, weapons of mass destruction. Anyways, her and Dean Fox eventually got divorced. And then you're never going to guess what happened in her life. After 8 years at the agency, she left the CIA in 2010, which I always wonder, do you ever just leave the CIA? Is that actually...
No.
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 Not unless it's in a body bag. Sorry.
More than likely.
a thing? Can you really get another job after? Do they just let you go in the CIA? What happens to a person when they leave the CIA? Anyways, I'll tell you what happened to her. Then she went to a Burning Man festival. I know what you're thinking. You're like, whoa, you mean like the Burning Man festival, middle of the desert, a bunch of kids high on LSD, tons of love drugs, connecting with one another. Yeah, she went to a Burning Man festival. And a mutual friend of hers introduced her to RFK Jr.'s son, RFK III. Yeah. And they
I
just
like
fell in
that
love.
shirt. That's a really cool shirt.
I'm
You know, I
telling
like
you,
birds.
Ben, he was there. They all have this very distinct jawline. But
Yeah, the Kennedy. He's got a Kennedy face.
he does.
Love, which many people do. And they got married in Cape Cod in 2018. And by 2023, she was working for RFK Jr.'s, her father-in-law's presidential campaign. Beautiful stuff, guys. That's it. I just wanted to tell you a beautiful, beautiful love story.
I'm not exactly sure what she's like implying other than we do not generally like the idea of, you know, spooks in the wild. Like it's not a good look.
We agree, Phil. Ben Shapiro is a self-hating human. That much I think we can agree.
He's one of those that I have to put in the micro penis category. He's got, even though he's not oligarch, he's not in the oligarch micro penis category, but just so clearly just self-loathing. Like, what is it? What he's got some issues. He's got some issues.
He's a small man.
And I think very small is exactly the point. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you, progressive lefty. I'm not generally a huge fan about Candace. I'm not, but I stand in solidarity with her on Palestine right now, and that's a priority. So I feel like she has a very big platform and has taken a stand on that. And so even if it's a broken clock is right twice a day, I'll take it with her. But
exceptionally consistent. I've been looking for the guys. Have you noticed that we talk about Candace Owens when it comes to getting people to not talk about Israel in a positive way anymore? Notice how we never talk about people like Dan Blazarian. We know who the people are that actually are doing this for reasons that are somewhat righteous. Nothing is foolproof, but we also know the people that are not doing this for reasons that are not, we'll just say, positive.
But here's the thing. Do we care about the reasons? And I'm saying that like nobody, look, I don't particularly care for Candace.
I think we do. No, well, hold on. I think we do care if the person in question who is espousing a position about Israel is doing it because he's saying that it's about the Jews. The Jews this, the Jews that, and this is why they're doing this. As you've said, anti-Semitism has definitely picked up
It's a real thing. No, my point is about what people are saying in the chat about Candace is, guys, we're in weird times now. And I will take allies in any fight that there are. Like, it doesn't matter if we agree on everything. It matters if we agree on what we're agreeing on, that we're working on right now. The fact that I don't know when that was, that I was on the same page as Ann Coulter was the most shocking experience of my life. How about that I'm agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene? So, at this point, we need to have consolidation. We can't be picking and choosing who's on our team for stopping a genocide in Gaza for whatever their reason is, however they're contributing. You know what I mean? So it's like we need everybody in on this.
We do. So with that said, you guys have been great tonight. And yes, Shunt Guy, Israel does love anti-Semitism because they believe that that's what's going to maintain their ethno-state. It's not going to work.
They've been using it. Actually, that's how it was created. Israel was created because of anti-Semitism. The Zionists were basically self-loathing. And the people that didn't want the Jews to be anywhere in Europe were a big part of that. And now you've got the Christian Zionists who really, they're extremely anti-Semitic, but they're very supportive of Israel because they need us all to be there for them to have their rapture. So Israel has always been premised on anti-Semitism, and now it's just perpetuating it.
Oh, yes. Agreed 1,000%. You guys have been great. We've had a great crowd. You guys have many of you have chipped in, which is great. And as we mentioned, we are going to be talking with our good friend, Margaret Kimberly, on Thursday. Brianna Joy Gray will follow next Monday. We'll have lots of other guests lined up. If you guys have any suggestions, make sure you shoot an email over to generationalchange@gmail.com. We have a wonderful partner that's helping us out on the back end right now. We want to make sure that
we have administrative support.
We do have administrative support. She's doing good. So let's keep it that way. We've got a lot of hopefully great opportunities to grow going forward. And we do appreciate not only you guys being here, but your insight as well. And the contributions you provide allow us to grow our channel more, which is what we hope to do. And so with that said, smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you Thursday.
Bye, y'all. Free